ammunition against you, but everybody knows it now, Senator.
They knew it before, too. I told them all about those things before I ran, because I didn't want the media to find them. But like, being on federal probation for a couple of years for shooting mailboxes, and I never should have slugged a cop in Laramie and spent a night in the clink, but I was young and stupid, and old and stupid.
I was going to say, according to Ann, that's its age hasn't changed a whole lot.
Let me tell you, Hardy I've known since he was 18. He knows me better than anyone, probably outside my family, and dear Becky, and he put it all in there. He said, I'm going to do the good and the bad. I said, well, you do it. And he had no editorial comment from me. There was one anecdote I lifted from it. He mentioned a colleague's name in the Senate and gave him opprobrium and ridicule.
Yeah.
Shocking. Which I jerked. I won't mention his name, will we?
Oh, my. As far as the book goes, Senator, are you happy with the way it turned out? I mean, is this everything you had anticipated, everything that you would like to see in print about your life?
It is. People had called and began to call and said, we do biography and we'd like to do a book on you. And I didn't even know them. I called Don and he was traveling the continents on their ship with that. But I read it thoroughly as a proofreader. Now, and then I picked up some stuff. I'm very picky. Then I read it as a reader, just a guy reading a book. And, you got the chuckle one place and a gulp in your throat the next, and that's what a book is. It's a superb book.
It was really very well done. Let me ask, as this is a legacy to be left for your kids, for your grandkids, for your great-grandkids to be able to go back and look at this and say, hey, this was Granddad, or this was great-granddad.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that you're worried about them seeing, or anything that you're worried about them reading about you?
No, because when they went to Cody schools, they came home and said, Dad, did you do this? And then, because if you have a reputation for raising hell, and a spirited colt makes the best horse, don't forget, they would say, Dad, did you were involved shooting the goats across the river? I said, no, I wasn't. Then they say, did you do this? And then I'd say, yes, I did. We never heard anything. We were destructive and monsters. But they had heard all that because Cody's a small town. And whenever they'd say, did you do this? I'd say, I did. I'm very sorry I did that. Or I didn't. So they knew all through life that they sorted out their old man, and they're very special, 3 kids.
Don, as you start to hear back from folks who have spent some time with the book and read the book, what are you hearing?
The response is great. People are loving the book because it kind of reintroduces Al. It goes back to the history of some of those things that we did so publicly all those years ago, and they're saying that this is a very human book. It's not so much about politics. It's about a person who has had an interesting life. So from 2 generations before he was born to age 80, his birthday was last month, it's everything.
And it really is interesting in weaving your words with the Senator's words as well. Did that flow come easy to you?
My concern was making it clear that I was there for a lot of these events that I'm talking about. I think it adds like a 3rd dimension. So occasionally I mention myself as a participant or observer of a scene. But my style, I suppose, over the years came a bit like Al's, our writing style, the way we express ourselves. But I had to make the clear distinction between us because I want people to be aware that Al didn't write the book. I did.
The excerpts from his Senator from your diary entries I find fascinating because again your writing style, you are very descriptive in your writing style. Did you have that in mind as you were putting this to page, that at some point in time someone might come back and in reading your words be able to maybe relive that moment with you?
In Cody High, I was in the journalism class, and I was the sports editor of the Cody Bronc Highlights, if I recall the name. And I won the Quill and Scroll Award for the best sports journalism in Wyoming. I went 1 year to Cranbrook School in Detroit, where they really pushed me. And they said, you have to write better than that. I said, well, I won the Quill and Scroll Award, and the professor said, show it to me. I want to see it for myself. I thought, boy, this is a bad place to be. And then at the University of Wyoming, they threw me into remedial English because I couldn't diagram a sentence. It was like dyslexia. I write in hyphens and I speak in hyphens. So in my descriptions of things, it comes from a lyrical class of English at the university, study of Shakespeare from Mrs. Thompson and Cody High. And when you get involved in Shakespeare, if you can't express yourself, you're lost in the swamp. But it all comes from taking it out of your head through the tip of your finger into the paper.
Well, and it really is a wonderful description. As again, as I made my way through the book, I had the opportunity to live some of these moments with you.
You did indeed.
Including the sobbing over a newly born grandchild, as I've done the same. And it's just it really is a very human book. And thank you very much for opening yourself up for this. But at the same time, you have laid your soul bare here for Don and then for the rest of us to see. Talking a little bit about, let's step back in time and talk a little bit about your time in the Army and the depression in your time in the Army. It really took a kick in the pants from Ann to get you going, didn't it?
I was in the Slough of Despond, and of course people knew me, and well, Al's a lot of fun. Hell, he's full of jokes, and he's there at the university, and married a beautiful gal, still beautiful, and go to the Army is the first time in my life I couldn't get away with anything. I couldn't BS my way out. I was called Alibi Al in high school. I could always fake somebody out, especially principals of school systems. They're easy to fake. They say, you're never going to do that again, all right? It was like, I promise you, cross my heart, and then you walk out and think, man, they got away with that. Anyway, enough of that. Got over there, and they gave me an assignment I was not prepared for. They found I'd had a year of law school, and they made me assistant adjutant of a regiment, the 10th Infantry Regiment of the 5th Division. A desk job. I mean, I started smoking 3 packs a day. I was drinking a case of suds every 2 or 3 days. German beer, you know, hell was a mark for a case. And I just began to slip into real depression. And Ann saw it. I began to sleep on Saturday afternoons when she'd say, this is Augsburg. This is the crossroads of the world. This is history. And I don't feel like it. Smoke a cigarette. Had one going in the kitchen, one in the bed. I said, whose cigarette is that? She said, you're smoking 2 at once. And so then I just thought I was having a heart attack and went to the 11th Field Hospital and laid there for 30 days. I said, you got to treat me. I've got ulcers and heartburn. And this doctor, I wish I could find his name. I thought he was a barbarian at the time. He said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just filled with anxiety and your feet sweat. So quit feeling sorry for yourself. God, I thought I got to get out of here. And I just, you know, I thought of pulling the black sheet over my head. And Ann finally said, you know, I'm not your mother. I love you, but I'm not your mother, and she's 8,000 miles away, and she's not here to hold your fevered brow, and you're 26 years old now, so grow up. I thought, well, I ought to dump her. She was the best thing in my life, and it is, and
sure.
Well, ever shall be, but it was there, and I think you should tell. But I really believe, and I believe this strongly, that anyone living hadn't had an ethereal, quick thought of suicide and rejected it totally. But somewhere it just went like a flicker across the back of their eye of their mind. And if they all knew that, the world would be a better place. Because anytime you think you've had a feeling that nobody else in the world has ever had, you're lying to yourself, and you're a child.
Well, and again, in sharing stories like that, you certainly do help out others, and again, that adds to the very human element of this book. The stories told, and Don, let's go back to some of this again. As you were a second party observer to many of these, so many wonderful stories, and we talked about this the other day in the relationships that the senator had. We sometimes forget the relationships he had with Mikhail Gorbachev, with George Bush, with Richard Nixon, with these leaders, and through these stories, we really get an opportunity again to remind ourselves, hey, you know, this is a pretty special guy sitting to your left.
Well, that goes a lot of that back to the diaries. It was an amazing thing to pick those things up. who's ever read them after Al created them. 6,000 pages, 19 binders. And I had a little chat with David McCullough, the historian, and he said, this is valuable stuff because Al put this down as it happened. A lot of times people will write a memoir, and you know, memory fades a little bit after a decade or two. These are direct quotes from the White House, from Gorbachev, things that they said in meetings that no one else would ever know. And they add a certain dimension when you're describing a relationship or a scene or a political or personal event to have it put down at the time. So it grew to 19 binders and over 2 million words. It took 5 months for me just to highlight. Then the problem was boiling it down from 1,000 pages to the length that the publisher would accept. But you're right. The real value of a book like this comes if you have access to exactly what happened and you have confidence that what you're writing is true.
Now, with that in mind, Senator, as you sat down
You can call me Al. You used to back in the old days.
as you sit and look at this book and read through this book, did you find anything that you had forgotten about? I mean, were there things here that you thought, you scratch your head and say, wow, that did happen, didn't it?
I had never looked at the diary. It's single space. It wasn't in a computer. I suppose you got it into some form like that, as the wizard here. But I'm never going to read it because I don't want to dig into it, and I'm sure that there are things that I wish I had not said, although Don says there is something like that. And someday the University of Wyoming will paw through it. But no, I don't think there was any. There was some detail that I missed, but I never missed an event of visiting with Nixon or many times with George I. I mean, he was a dear friend since 1962 when I met him. Gorbachev, 25 years, and then to have the two of us doing this shtick at the university, just sitting with 2 chairs, bouncing stuff back and forth. Big, I remember he came to Washington. He saw me. The senators were entertaining him, and he grabbed me, gave me a big hug, and they took this picture. I thought, that'll be in a Wyoming paper, Simpson loves commies. And he was, and is, he changed the world. Anwar Sadat. How can you ever forget the whole afternoon with Anwar Sadat in the Barrages, which is his palace on the Nile, and his beautiful wife. I'll never forget the power of the man. He just charisma. He just exuded virility and charisma. So, King Carlos of Spain, Marcassoni, Lech Walesa, and I have Nelson Mandela. I mean, I had personal time with all those people. All those people that the world knows about. All of them I had a personal time, and that's an amazing thing. You don't think about it at the time.
Sure. And interesting in the book is that it seems like after each of those meetings, you're still very humbled by the opportunity. I mean, because you have described out of the words of your own diary, you and Ann going and jumping in the old Chevy with the Wyoming plates and looking at one another and saying to yourselves, what we just got to do.
Here's a gal from Grayville and a kid from Cody, met at the university and seeing the world and meeting the world's leaders in an intimate way. That was rather stunning to see the detail of those meetings overseas and in America and wherever. But you knew you didn't get carried away because you knew the real lodestar is Wyoming. That's where the North Star is. And so we all knew that the anchor was here. So we'd say, we don't want to look like we know all these people. And we don't want to tell people that this week we were with Gorby or whatever. Because Wyoming people say, pay attention to what you're doing around here, Buster. And so it wasn't hard to do that. And Ann entertained people all over Washington, take them around. She knew more about the White House and the art. We could get in and out easily. It was a joy. 18 years, but we wanted to come home.
Yeah. Again, a great look behind the scenes. It's called Shooting from the Lip. It is the life of Senator Al Simpson, written by old-time friend Don Hardy, and available to you in bookstores today. If you don't mind, can we talk about some current events and things that are going on right now?
Anything you wish, but that people say, "What are you doing, Simpson? Not doing a book tour, making money?" I said, "Wait a minute, just a second. That's Don Hardy's book. He wrote it. He's the author. He contracted with the University of Oklahoma Press, and he gets all the royalties from that book. I do not."
Is he going to buy you dinner at least?
No, I had a separate little contract with him. We're going to tear that up. He can keep anything he makes off this damn thing. I mean, I'll just go give a speech somewhere.
There you go.
No, I didn't mean
Well, go find it again in your bookstores today.
Yeah.
What I found most interesting about the book is the things that we continue to fight today: immigration, overspending by Washington, all of these things that you were fighting in the Senate back in the 80s. They continue to fight today. Even when you were asked by President Obama and the Erskine-Bowles Committee to come out and come up with these cuts. As that was pushed aside, now we've got back to the super committee that is looking at cutting a fourth of what you recommended here just a year ago. Is there ever an end to this? I mean, do we ever get the committees taken care of and the committee recommendations in hand? And then does Washington ever actually walk through and do what a committee asks them to do?
They will do that. And I've been involved. They'll say this is all a failure. Let me tell you, I was on the Select Commission on Immigration and Refugee Policy with Kennedy. Father Ted Hesburgh was our chair. We put out a recommendation for a legal immigration bill and an illegal immigration bill and passed both of them. The reason the illegal one didn't work is every time we tried to put in a more secure identifier, the kooks on the right and the left called it a national ID card. And once you throw up one of those bombs of words, those flash words, a national ID, so it didn't work. And now they're talking about retina scans and fingerprints. I haven't anybody heard talk about national ID. Then I was on the Iraq study group. There were 5 Dems, 5 Republicans. We gave a report for 67 different recommendations. The last administration accepted 5 or 6 of them, and since then, 57 of them have been adopted by us. So I don't have any qualm about saying this is a dead end. And guess what the 12 super committee is working on right now? Our stuff. They can't duck it. And we're not talking about cutting. You're talking about reducing the size of government. And they ask for a 10% increase, and you give them 5, and they call it a cut. And we're not talking about cutting Social Security. I get so disgusted. The most vicious stuff I get are from people over 70 years old. It makes me puke. And these people aren't going to be effective at all. They don't give a damn about their children and their grandchildren. They cherish the AARP. When I was in the Senate, I had a hearing on the AARP. They said, "You can't do that. That's suicide." I said, "I want to find out what they make, what they do with their money, what they pay their people." They were furious. Don remembers how furious they were. But, you know, if you have guts and courage and go to town meetings, I did all of those all the time, and give them the answers, no BS, no mush, they would often come out and say, "You know, I still think you're a dink. I didn't agree with you at all, but thanks for coming here. Thanks for showing up. I admire that. You know, I don't like what you're saying and what you're doing." That's all you can ask in politics.
You still have quite a few years in front of you, I trust. And at this point in time, though, do you look back and do you say any regrets? Any regrets of your time in the Senate? Any regrets of your life to this point?
Well, I suppose the Clarence Thomas hearing was, you know, I was cheered on by, you know, some and damned by others. But that was the toughest thing in my life. Ann was in Wyoming, and I'm tired and I'm nasty because Anita Hill, was never talking about sexual harassment. She wanted us to know about his behavior, which is the fact that both of them watched porn movies at Yale on Saturdays, and then he talked about it. And I had a wife and a mother and a daughter, one of whom had been subjected to about 180 degrees more than that, and I lost my marbles. Now, I've talked with Anita Hill since. She was very charitable in the book talking about me. She said, "That's just Simpson. I didn't like him at first, but realized who he was and is. That's just him." And I think she's an amazing woman, as is Clarence Thomas, an amazing man. people ought to give up on both of them and quit dinging on both of them. And I always have the view, if you can't forgive a person, that's like letting them live in your head rent-free. And hatred corrodes the container it's carried in, so I don't live that way. But I was nasty, hostile, probative, and then I said, bring on the other person who wants to testify, the one that Clarence Thomas fired because she said something about a fag that she worked with. And she was going to use her as a witness. I said, bring her on. I can't wait to cross-examine that lovely thing. And so Anita Hill asked me, he said, what happened to Marcia? She didn't testify. You kept her from testifying. Wait a minute. I said, Joe Biden called her attorney and said, is your client going to testify? And he said no. And Joe said, I want an affidavit right now from you. You fax it immediately. And Anita Hill said, I never knew that. So we talked about things neither of us knew, and she's at Brandeis, I think, still, and amazing, you know. So I don't, that was the biggest regret. All the other stuff was so stupid, you know, when I was a kid. You don't even know what you do.
Yeah.
So what can you ever regret? You're dumb and smart ass, and you're dumb and stupid.
Senator, our pleasure. It's always a pleasure to spend some time with you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. It is called Shooting from the Lip. It is the life of Senator Al Simpson, again written by Don Hardy. Don, thank you very much for the behind-the-scenes look. And Senator,
just one guide for the people of the area: don't talk to Dick Cedar about my life. he alone.
Are you kidding me? He's the only guy. Yeah, he's the only guy still with ammunition. Are you kidding me? Senator, thank you very much for the time this morning.
Brian.
Always our pleasure. That is, again, Senator Al Simpson and Don Hardy in studio this morning. We would encourage you to pick up the book and really get an inside look on this fellow who represented Wyoming and represented Wyoming so well for so many years. It is under a partly cloudy sky, a bit of a breeze with it this morning, 38 degrees now downtown. Keep in mind some dense fog still in some low-lying